Hello and welcome to Rootstem Gaming. This is going to be a review of the latest Night Codex that just came out from Games Workshop on the weekend of this actually being recorded. I've got Codex. It's nice. It's not so bad. It comes in at 120 pages, just a little bit over the halfway mark for the Space Marine Codex, which is 205 pages, and it retails at £25 for the initial Codex. Now, initially when I got it, I noticed that the front cover of the actual book is very similar to the 7th edition book, which has actually caused me some confusion in recent times between my Elder Codex and the 7th edition Elder Codex, as they actually both look very similar. And I've taken my 7th edition Codex to a tournament game before. Thankfully, Battlescribe's got some rules on there, so I managed to muddle through, but it didn't end well, taking that particular, especially for people taking the mick out of me, to be honest. Now, the beginning of the book starts with the usual Games Workshop layout. You've got the history of the actual book, not the book, history of the knights themselves, various different houses, which of course is going to be used, for actual rules later on. And of course, it tells you about the history of the knights and involvement with the Mechanicus. It talks about the various nobles and houses that control the actual knight forces, and it also describes free blades, which is done in a bit more detail in this book, to be honest with you. And it also talks about what happened to a lot of the houses and situations when the Great Rift split and tore itself across the galaxy. Now, the artwork is second to none. It's what you expect from a Games Workshop product. It's really good art. But one of the images made me think that these new models of the Armiger and Dominus class machines make the complete set look like a series of like a mini Titans. I mean, if you look at it like the Armiger is the Warhound class, the Reavers are Questores, and the Dominus being the Warlord, especially with the new model having these shoulder mounts. That looks so much like a Warlord Titan. It's unreal. After you get through to this, you get to the meat of the book, which is going to be the rules, which is always in the last sort of like third. And I'll be honest with you, not much in the way of variety detachment wise. You don't get that with knights. It's just basically a load of data sheets telling you different ways of combining your weapons to form a particular knight itself. Now the actual start of the rules is the armor units. Now you've got the Warglaive, which is the one that you got in the Forge Bane box set. That's got the Thermal Spear melter weapon. Rules of that's already been made public, to be honest, and not much has changed since its release. And the other is the Helavan, I believe that's how you pronounce it. This is packing 2 twin autocannons on each arm, which actually do 3 damage instead of 2, very much like the Predator autocannon. So these can strip off a lot of wounds off various units. Really, really can strip off quite a lot. But the Armiger class does come with 12 wounds, so it's not really harder than many of the frontline battle tanks. There's not a lot of complaints from opponents saying they're going to be too hard to take down, but they do benefit from a 3+ armor and a 5+ invulnerable save. Now, the 5+ invulnerable save is going to make sure that you're going to get some saves, good saves against last cannons, as an example. The next, which is quite unique, is the Knight Preceptor, with a new weapon called the Las Impulsor. Now, the Las Impulsor has 2 modes of fire, ranging from D6 to 2D6 shots, between 6 to 12 in strength and up to a -4 AP. I've not come across this model on the website, so this might be a model rules that's been made for a potential future release or a potential future box where it's going to have a Las Impulsor in the actual arm set for the knights. Don't get me wrong, Games Workshop in the past has released rules for units that never came out, such as the Elder Exodites. They were in the 2nd edition Codex. You never actually saw the rules for these guys come out. They never really actually got any models. The standard knights don't seem to have any differences at all between themselves and the Index Imperial 2. They're both pretty much the same. There's some wording changes, such as ranged weapons rather than shooting weapons when it comes to the shield, but there's nothing really in the way of massive amounts of difference. The Dominance class, which is next on the list, really has 4 more wounds than your normal knights, and no difference to the Ion shield, so they can take only a couple more wounds, which someone's hitting it with some high strength weapon. Now, it's not really going to make much of a difference, but it does pack a hell of a lot of firepower. The mounted volcano lance on the Castellan at strength 14, normally meaning that you need 2s to wound most vehicles due to them being, only toughness 7. There's a lot of space marine vehicles, a lot of elder vehicles, a lot of Necron vehicles don't tend to get above that mark. Imperial ones do, such as the Land Raiders, so you may struggle a little bit against them, but I can't see you struggling too much with a -4 and a strength of 14. The Valiant has the Thundercurl Harpoon. Now, I'd love to discuss this on the wider community because I'd love to know what people think, whether or not you get quantum shielding on this harpoon weapon, with it being a damage 10. It's a straight damage 10. So there's no dice roll. And the quantum shielding for the Necrons is you roll under the amount of damage that's being done to you. So if you get hit by a harpoon, which is damage 10, and quantum shielding means that regardless of whatever you roll, you're going to be under it, because the maximum you can roll is a 6, or is a 6 an auto fail? I'd love to sort of know about that. So if anyone actually has any opinions, if you just want to comment below, I don't mind having a discussion upon these. It would be quite fascinating to find out. These new knights, don't get me wrong, they do a massive amount of damage if they explode. Basically, you roll 2d6s when it loses its last wound, and if any one is a 6, any one of these dice is a 6, then it's 2d6 inch d6 mortal wounds. If both dice are a 6, it's 3d6 inch units taking d6 mortal wounds, which can be quite a large explosion. Now, if you mix this in with a noble sacrifice stratagem, which you can find later on in the book, it means that a knight will explode on a 4, and it specifically states that if you roll 2 4 pluses, you get the 3d6 version, which could be quite fun if you've got a knight that's quite weakened. Use a couple of stratagems to boost it up to its maximum profile, wade it in, and then just let it get annihilated. Because, of course, if your enemy doesn't deal with it, it's going to deal them a lot of damage. Now, the noble houses, of course, are kind of like next. They're on that little bit of a page that tells you that your certain units have got various different rules to them. Your basic houses, of course, you've got Terrain, which allows you an extra d6 when advancing or charging, and discarding the lowest, so it makes you quite quick. You've got Griffith, which is +1 when charging or intervening. Now, this is particularly key because it's when charging, because there is a Morton, which is +1 when charging or being charged, which I don't know why they've got kind of two of the same thing in there, but it does be Griffith. The difference is Griffith gives all of your knights heroic interventions, similar to a character. So that could be quite useful if you're fighting alongside other Imperial forces and they get charged and suddenly someone's got a night wade in there. There is some stratagems to help you out with that as well. Hawk Shroud is next, which doubles the amount of remaining wounds when determining its stat line. I can see that being in a lot of tournament players, especially when you've got a knight at the back giving you some fire support. It's taking some hits and damage, but it can still dish out maximum firepower. Cadmus is reroll 1s in combat against anything with less than 13 wounds. Their little trait is that they like to take out hordes. So anything less than 13 wounds, you get to reroll 1. So they don't really like taking on the big things, but don't mind taking on the smaller things. And then you've got a second set of traits, which is for the ones that actually come with the Mechanicus. So Raven, which is no -1 when firing assault weapons, and you can actually move. You can run or advance, and your weapons then go from being heavy to assault, which we've seen this a lot in various different codexes. Necrons have got something very similar. I believe some Space Marine ones might have it as well, to be honest. I can't quite remember off the top of my head, but I have seen it a couple of times in different codexes. You've then got Tyrannus, which ignores wounds on a 6. That might be another one you see quite a lot in tournament play. Of course, ignoring the wounds that you receive on 6. It's like having 2 saves, a bit like a feel no pain 6+. Then you've got Crast, which rerolls failed hits for being charged or charging, and you always reroll these failed hits against Titanic units. So that's a little bit better than some of the other ones that we've come across. And then you've got Volker, which is reroll 1s when shooting at the closest target. That's probably the one I'm going to be using because that does sound more like a defensive one, and I'm using basically a Mechanicus faction that's no longer exists apparently, according to the new version with the Great Rift. Now, After that, of course, you've got stratagems. You've got 29 stratagems in total, which is insane. They're all quite decent. They all have purpose. Some cost more for the Dominus class. So if you use the Rotate Ion Shields, for example, it costs 3 points to do it on them, whereas it costs 1 point to do it on any of the smaller knights. Noble Sacrifices, I mentioned before, that's pretty much going to be one of my favourites. Chain Sweep for people with the chainsaw blade arms. This is quite useful against horde armies because you roll a d6 for each model within an inch of your knight, and each 6 that you get, you cause a mortal wound to that unit. So if you've been surrounded by a swarm, like I was in one of my earlier battle reports, swinging that chain blade is basically going to be able to knock off a couple of units that are actually, in contact with you. Now, some of them can be quite expensive. A lot of them tend to come in the cost of 2 command points, which a pure knight army is going to struggle to do. A pure knight army is not going to have a lot of command points. You're only going to be able to, if you've got 3 Lords of War, so if you take 6 Lords of War in a game, you're only going to be able to get an extra 2 command points on top of the 3 that you're going to get for being Battleforged. So I can see a lot of these stratagems being used mainly when you take Guard Allies or you take Space Marine Allies to bump it up with a battalion detachment. Now, I've noticed as well, a lot of the rules in the book also state unmodified dice rolls. So it'll say things like an unmodified dice roll of a 6. So it makes me wonder if Games Workshop's going to be going that way with a lot of things. I know a lot of people tend to have the 6+, and it's like, oh, I can +1 for this or -1 for that. So it never, you can never get your benefit, or you're always getting your benefit better than what you could before. Necron players, especially with Tesla weapons. That doesn't seem to affect these guys. This guy, it says it's an unmodified roll of a 6 on a lot of their stuff. So you're not going to get a lot of confusion with people saying, oh, well, you can +1 to hits, therefore it's going to be 5s. It literally states unmodified. Now, the heirlooms as well on the codex is quite extensive. There's 22 in total, which is a little bit insane. I mean, I play Blood Angels, and I played them the other day, and they only have 6. Why would they only have 6, whereas Night Force would have 22 different heirlooms? I have no idea. A lot of them are upgrades to the basic knight equipment, so they're not actually that hard to get. An upgraded Reaper Chainsword, making it +8 strength, -4 and 6 damage. Upgraded Gatling Cannon, making it to heavy 14, causing 2 hits instead of 1, again, with every unmodified dice roll of a 6 when you roll into hits. So 14 dice, any 6s explode into extra hits, which can be quite, I think that's, again, another one I'm probably going to be taking quite often, as I do like taking a Gatling Cannon. Now, something new is a free blade chart. Now, this never really came into it before, because free blades were always considered to be kind of, it's a free blade, it's mainly your paint scheme. But these now actually have benefits and downsides. Now, your benefits are called qualities, which you basically you can pick one, or if you don't decide to pick one, you can roll 2 random d6, and then have that one, then both of them included in your knight. Now, it does state that you can't re-roll a double, so if you do roll a double on that, it's tough. Yeah, that's the one that you've got. And then, of course, after you've got your qualities, you've then got to roll for your burdens. Now, again, burden is, if you're picking it, you've got to pick 2 burdens. If you're rolling it, you roll a random d6. So, picking the random 2 and then minusing the random 1 is probably going to be the best way of doing it. Now, the burdens will only burden you if you fail the leadership test. Now, this is the old school leadership test on 2d6. So if you roll equal to or under the leadership characteristic of the knight, then you don't get the burden. If you fail that, then the burden takes effect. And I believe that's at the beginning of the turn. Now, the last page, of course, is just simply the points and tactical objective cards that you can get. And the points themselves are slightly different than those found in the Imperial 2 book. Some up, some down, depending on the unit. Not much in the way has changed. It's mainly, I'll be honest with you, the book, I've got it, don't get me wrong, but it's mainly a lot. If you're not going to go for the Dominus or the Armiger class knights, then there's not really, to me, if you've already got Index Imperial 2, just buy the cards. Don't bother going out and buying the whole kit caboodle. Just buy that deck of cards for the stratagems. I always recommend buying the deck of cards when playing anyway, because it's a hell of a lot easier than going through, because you can always discard the ones you're probably not going to use and then just have them out in front of you, the ones you are going to use. But that's it. I'm excited for these new rules, to be honest with you. Whether or not the cost of the codex is worth it, that's another matter completely, depending on what you're going to be using it for. I feel like Games Workshop has actually filled the book out with lots of heirlooms and lots of stratagems just to give it a page count. So that it's actually a lot bulkier than, oh, here's just a couple of nice stat lines, which some of the previous codexes were, but some of those codexes were actually a lot cheaper. So we'll see when we're playing these games. I'll probably be trying to rock these in a battle report in a couple of weeks or so. And we'll see you guys again next time. Don't forget, like, share, subscribe, and hit that notification button for more.